Welcome to Equity Happens, Strategies of Successful Investors. This unique program features excerpts from a day-long workshop and will cover many of the important concepts and mindsets successful investors are using to profitably invest in real estate. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just getting started, you'll discover key distinctions that can position you for success. Your host for the program is professional investor and talk show host Robert Helms. Robert is a highly successful landlord, investor, and developer. He teaches real estate appraisal and practices at the college level and serves on the board of directors for several companies. Co-founder of the Advisor Financial Alliance, a real estate investor development program, Robert mentors thousands of investors through seminars, mentoring clubs, and field trips. He's the co-author of the book Equity Happens, Building Lifelong Wealth with Real Estate, and the host of the Real Estate Guys radio program. Now, here's Robert to show you why real estate is a great investment vehicle.
Lots of people say they want to own more real estate, and you know what they're doing this morning? They're still sleeping. You guys got up early, you got here, you made it on time because we're videoing today, and that already says a bunch about you. Guess what happens when we do a free seminar, and there are a couple things we do a year that are free. We get a whole bunch of people that sign up and they say, I'm going to be there, you bet, I'll see you there, I'll be at the seminar. And then the seminar comes and goes and they weren't there. As Mr. Rohn says, Jim Rohn says, well, the birds got them. Right? We don't know why that is. As soon as we put a price tag on the seminar and you had to write a check or use your credit card, you become a lot more likely to be here. And guess what? Today, almost everybody's shown up. Now, are a few people going to be late? Well, yeah, that always happens. A few people are going to be late because life happens, but a lot of stuff happens as you learn today. But I'd like to congratulate you for being here, and I have a question for you. Here's the question. How many of you came today because you want to learn more about real estate? Oh, look at all the hands. That is awesome. Now, here's a better question. How many of you came today because you want to own more real estate? Do you see the difference there? A lot of people want to learn about real estate, but guess what? Education is not enough. It's not enough, as I talked about earlier, just to learn. Education's important, right? You got to learn. You got to know something about it. My friend Todd Barnhart wrote a book called The 5 Rituals of Wealth. And in that book, Todd says there are no successful financial illiterates, meaning that people get good in the money game, understand the game they're in. They understand finance. If you're going to get good at the real estate investment game or the real estate investment business, you need to have an understanding about it. So education is truly important, but education is not enough. We have this syndrome called paralysis of analysis, right? We get these people that come to our seminars, and we love these people. We call them groupies. And what they do is they show up to everything. They show up to our classes at the college. They show up to our seminars. They listen to our radio show every week. They know the formulas. They have calculators. They've learned. They've studied. What aren't they doing? Buying anything. And if you don't ever buy anything, how much are you going to profit from real estate? None. And you know what I love? I love all these no money down guys, right? No money down. There's no money down. First of all, can you buy real estate no money down? No. No, you can't. You can't buy real estate no money down. Well, okay, there are some instances where you can get 100% financing. You still have closing costs and all those kind of things, but it's very rare, and the competition for those deals is very high. So it's hard to get a really good no-money-down deal. Plus, because you aren't putting any money into the deal, the cash flow isn't very good, and many times those are the properties that end up what we call upside down, where there's more payment going out than coming in, boo hiss, and because of that situation, what happens is people lose the properties. Is that what you want to do, lose a property? No. So why is it that all these late-night TV gurus will speak to no money down? Because guess what a lot of people have? No money down. But they got $299 on their credit card, don't they? So I'm not trying to dissuade you, but if you have absolutely no money, no job, no credit, guess what you have also? No future, right? So it does take something. Now, it's possible to get started with just a little money and the desire. And you know what? Which is more important? Desire and attitude are everything. Absolutely. We have a saying at the Advisor Financial Alliance, which is our group of companies that help people create wealth through real estate, and that is education for effective action. Education is important, but what's more important? Action. And not just any action, not random action, but effective action. It's important that you learn what you need to learn so you can take the right steps. But the problem is people want to wait until they know enough before they do anything. Now, I don't want you to just take action right away like crazy. We had someone come in our office in one of our consultations. This is great. We do these consultations with people, and most of what we do, of course, we teach in groups. But at some point, we need to sit down with you and decide where it is that you're going. And we sat down with this couple, and they said, well, we're ready to go. In fact, we want a good deal, and we'll get one. If you can give us a good deal today, I will write a check. Who's looking for a good deal? Who's looking for a good deal? You guys all want good deals, right? That kind of goes without saying. Well, we had to kind of slow them down a little bit, say, whoa, back the horse up. Listen, you can't just write a check until you understand what real estate's trying to do for you, and that's a pretty important concept. All right, here's another question for you. Are you a consumer or are you an investor? And do you know the difference? See, most people that I see start in real estate investing are consumers who are suffering from an investorial seizure. They think they're investors, but the problem is they act like consumers. So what's the difference between a consumer and an investor? Well, here's one of the basic things. First of all, a consumer saves their money. They save, they hold on to what they have, and they don't want to let go of it. My hard-earned money. They put it in the mattress, they put it in the piggy bank, they save it, and they're very concerned about losing their money. An investor, on the other hand, invests their money. They don't save it and hoard it. They put it out there into the world so it can do some work. And if you put it out there in the world so it can do some work, it will come back, hopefully with friends. And then it's a bigger pile of money, right? Now, when people come through our consultation, they have different goals and different ideas and so forth. But everybody has a different perspective. Later on this afternoon, I'm going to talk about your personal investment philosophy. And what you want real estate to accomplish for you is probably very different from what the person next to you wants, even if that person is married to you or related to you, right? Sometimes we have to talk about those things. It's amazing how many husbands and wives come to the consultation process and they think they're on the same page, and so we start asking some of these questions. And we find out that they're not really on the same page, that it takes a little talking through to get that, right? And I've got that, and I'm not married, but just a little word of advice from watching a lot of couples come through consultation. Life is short, do it her way. All right, so consumers think everything costs too much money. Do you know how much it costs to park at the airport? It's amazing how much they can charge for food and soft drinks. And here's my favorite, bottled water at the airport. Bottles of water at the airport are like $3.50, right? That's a lot of money for water. But when someone says something's expensive, that's expensive. Here's what I want you to always say, either in your mind or out loud, either depending on the situation. When someone says that's expensive, or you find yourself saying that's expensive, I want you to say this. Compared to what? Bottled water at $3.50 is expensive compared to dying of thirst, right? So I'm staying at a hotel in New York City, and I want to get my suit pressed, and I go downstairs to talk to the concierge about getting my suit pressed. They say, Mr. Helms would be happy to handle that for you. It'll be $22.50. And I went, $22.50? I don't want to buy another suit. I just want to have this one clean. I go, do you know that my dry cleaner charges $7? And they said, yes, Mr. Helms. And how much would it cost for you to get there? Today we're going to hear from one of the guys that is on our real estate show quite a bit, and also is our attorney, Jeff Lehrman. He's going to talk about how to form entities. And Russ Gray, who you'll meet today, and Charlie Kraftler and I went to see Jeff Lehrman at a seminar he was giving, and it was 10 minutes before it was time for him to start, and we pulled into the parking garage next door to the hotel, and Russ had driven that day, and he used to have this big old Suburban, right, this big old fancy car, because we like to carry around a lot of stuff, right, and he pulls into the thing, and the guy wants $35 to park the car for an hour and a half. And we're like, $35? And all of a sudden, we all break into consumer mindset, right? Well, I know, we'll go around the street, we'll see if we can find a parking space, or maybe we can find a cheaper garage. And I'm going, you guys, the seminar starts in 10 minutes. Which is more important, us saving $5 or $10 in parking, or us being there before Jeff's seminar starts, getting a chance to say hello, meeting some of the people, and being relaxed in our seats when it starts? So $35 is expensive, but compared to what? Consumers focus on the price. And what consumers do with their money, by the way, is they buy depreciating liabilities, things that go down in value over time, like big screen TVs and jet skis and those kind of things that seem fun but add no value to your life. What do investors spend their money on? Assets, appreciating assets. We hope things that go up in value. So it's a difference. Now, if you get involved with our Foundations program, which is how you get in our mentoring clubs, you'll get to understand very clearly the difference between consumer and investor mentality. But I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. So let's talk about real estate. We're kind of positive about real estate. I don't know where you're at. Some of you already own income property. In fact, if you already own a property other than the house you live in, raise your hand. Look at all the people that are already profiting from real estate. Give them a hand. That's great. Now, how many of you own the home you live in but no other property? All right, you're building the American dream, and that's a great way. In the Bay Area here, where you guys are at, what happens? Properties go up quite a bit. We see people come to the consultation. Guess where the majority of their net worth and wealth is? In their house. And they think it's what we call hard-earned equity. What is equity? I'll give you the definition a little bit, but equity is the difference between what the property is worth and what you owe on it. So it's the part that is yours, right? People think, I have my hard-earned equity. In fact, we did a flyer once for a seminar saying, come put your hard-earned equity to work. How hard did you work to earn your equity? You lived in the house. That's all you did. You lived in the house, and the house would have been value. And in the Bay Area, that happens, right? Not everywhere. Houses don't always go up in value, do they? Okay, but here's what real estate can provide. Real estate can provide long-term profit, right? Mark Twain said, don't wait to buy real estate and wait. Time is your friend. In fact, time will heal almost any wounds when it comes to real estate. If you've made a mistake, if something didn't turn out right, there's a good chance that if you wait long enough, it'll take care of itself. And it's a great long-term investment. My dad, we call him the godfather of real estate. He's forgotten more about real estate than most of us will know. You'll get to meet Bob later on today. But Bob has lots of properties. He has this one property I like to talk about. It's in downtown San Jose. And Bob's reached a point in his life where he can have a property like this. This property is a 104-year-old Victorian. Now, I like Victorians. I think they're kind of neat. What's the problem with Victorians? Maintenance, a little expensive to maintain. But you know what? If you're Bob, you can afford it. So you have a nice property. And he's got this property, and every month it has positive cash flow of about $4,000. Meaning after he pays the mortgages and the insurance and the expenses and the taxes and all that stuff, he has $4,000 left at the end of the month. So every month, $4,000, $4,000, $4,000, $4,000. My sister and I and my dad go to Hawaii, and Dad is Mr. $100 bill. Right? He's like paying for all kinds of dinners and stuff. We're like, dude, what's with the cash? He goes, well, the rent. He's got all this money coming in. So my question to you is, how many of those properties would you like to have? 5? 10? Would you be happy with 20? 100, someone says? Here's my favorite answer. All of them. Right? Because at a certain point, you want to have property that is generating cash, whether you're doing anything about it or not. So there are long-term profits to be made in real estate. That's a great story. Now, is that the best way to optimize that property of Bob's? Probably not. Russ Gray is going to talk about optimization later on, and I'm going to give you an example of another one of Bob's properties that maybe isn't such a happy story. You'll think it's a happy story when I first tell it, but when I dissect it a little bit, you'll see where it can go with that. But the whole concept behind the buy and hold strategy is that over time, rents go up, you pay down the loan, and the property becomes more valuable. Is that a valid strategy in real estate? Absolutely. Here's the problem with that. It's slow and boring. And many of you don't want to be bored, right? So instead, we look at short-term profits. Can real estate generate short-term profits? Sure, lots of ways. What we do in our foundations program and our mentoring clubs is we do case studies of properties. So wouldn't it be interesting to see what someone paid for a property, look at the pictures of what it looked like before, then look at what they spent to put into the property and pictures of it during construction, and then once it's done, what they sold it for. Would that be good information? Yeah, you get to see. Now, we have some people who do those kinds of projects, and they'll share the information with the group in mentoring clubs. It's one of the most powerful things we do is get like-minded investors together. But you can make short-term profits in real estate. Now, what else can you do? You can hedge against inflation because automatically real estate goes up kind of with the economy as rents go up and everything else. So it's good protection. See, inflation is going to work. The question is it going to work for you or against you? As values go up and as the dollar becomes weaker and so forth, as it costs more and more money, $3.50 to buy a bottle of water, the question is, are you a victim of inflation or are you a beneficiary of inflation? Which would you rather be? I think you'd want to benefit from it. We'll show you how to do that. Okay, also, there's some tax advantages. You know there's some distinct tax advantages. Today we have Dan Kennedy, who's a CPA, who's going to talk about some of the tax techniques and advantages for investment real estate that don't apply to your residence, but do to investment property that you have. And then Michael Yes, who's an attorney and a specialist in 1031 exchanges, is going to show you what I think is the second best tax tool there is in real estate, and that's the power of the 1031 exchange. If you don't know what that is yet, well, you're in the right place. You're going to learn all about it today. But there are some distinct tax advantages to investing in real estate. Also, a great thing about real estate is it can provide an ongoing asset. When you buy income property, you buy two things. Guess what those two things are? Income and property. That's what you buy, income and property. And a stream of income that continues and hopefully gets larger doesn't necessarily change the underlying asset. So you can have a property for years, right, that provides $4,000 a month positive cash flow, and then you can leave it to your kids. Or not, right? You get to decide, but it's an asset that will go on for future generations. Let's talk about owning your own home. I think owning your own home is the American dream, right? And when you own your own home, there's a lot of reasons to own your own home other than the money. One of the reasons to own your own home is you get to decide when to move and what colors to paint the walls. You get to decide how big your pet is and how many pets you have. No one tells you when to move or what to do or any of that kind of stuff. You're the one who gets to decide. That's a great reason. And you can raise your kids there and all that kind of stuff. And owning a home is awesome. In fact, it's a lot better than renting. But here's what we know. There will always be people that have to rent. Is that true? Eventually, I hope they become homeowners. But in the meantime, guess what they do? They pay my mortgages. I got over 200 of them. And every night they go to bed in one of my units, and they wake up in the morning, and they go to work, and they earn a paycheck, and they come back, and they pay some of it to me, and I don't have to manage them or supervise them or watch what they do or anything. It's really a cool deal. Now, Brian Tracy says most of life's problems do come with hair on top. So you've got to think about the whole aspect of landlording. And we have a whole seminar called Landlord Boot Camp, which is designed to show you the ins and outs of what it takes to be a landlord. Because if you're going to own income properties, you need to understand rental law. Oh, yes, especially those of you in California. Because California is a very tenant-friendly state. Some of the other states we're in are very landlord-friendly states. Now, that's interesting, too. How many of you right now would not consider an investment outside of the state of California? There's a few hands, right? And that's a couple. It's okay. It's perfectly okay. Charlie Crackler, who you met earlier, Charlie's dad has a 20-minute rule in his personal investment philosophy. Charlie's dad, Joe, is a very successful investor, and he won't invest in property more than 20 minutes from his house. Well, guess what? Because he lives in Los Altos Hills, there's a lot of nice property 20 minutes from his house. But what's the problem for most of us trying to buy property 20 minutes from Charlie's dad's house? It's expensive, right? So you may want to look a little further than that. Some of the examples we use, for instance, we'll say a $200,000 property. And instantly, you people in the Bay Area go, well, where can you buy for $200,000? What is that, a mobile home? Right? But in some areas of the country, that's like a really, really nice house. We're going to show you some case studies today from some other areas. And you'll get to see. But if you're not comfortable going to another area, then don't. 2 years ago, I did not personally own a single property outside of the state of California. Today, without selling hardly any of my California property, I own far more property outside of the state of California than in, because my philosophy is this: live where you want to live and invest where the numbers make sense. Live where you want to live and invest where the numbers make sense. Is owning better than renting? I think owning is always better than renting, and so we want to encourage people in home ownership. Most of the wealth in America is either made or held in real estate. If you went out tomorrow and you made a killing in the stock market overnight, how many of you would invest some of that money at least in investment real estate? A lot of hands. Now, if tomorrow you went out and via investment real estate you made a big chunk of money, how many of you would go out and buy stocks? Not a lot of hands, but the stock market's coming back, isn't it? We'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so the question that we get a lot of times at the seminars is, well, I don't own a house yet. Let's see the people in the room, we haven't done this one yet, who don't own any real estate. You don't own any real estate. Go ahead, raise your hands, be okay. Now, you people have the advantage. You have the biggest advantage because you don't have any bad habits yet. Seriously, people that are, we get people that are, I've owned property for 20 years, and they think that they know it all because of that. Let me talk about your mind for a moment. Your mind can only be in one of two states. Number one, your mind can be in judgment. Yeah, what is all this stuff? What are these fancy, fast-talking guys trying to tell me? Right? That's judgment. Or your mind can be in curiosity. It can be open. And the mind is like a parachute. It only works well when it's open. So if you're curious, well, I wonder if I could make that work. We've seen successful investors who have done very well in the past do extremely well in the future by changing their thinking a little bit. Right? Albert Einstein said that a problem cannot be solved at the same level of thinking that created it. And so the way that we get to the next step or the next level in any area of business or investment is to think a little bit differently. One of the best ways to think differently is to get around people who think differently. And then finally, tenants are our clients who want to remember that all the time. In Landlord Boot Camp, we talk about treating clients well because they are clients. They aren't your pains. They're your gains, right? Clients tenants are the people that make money for you because they're paying your mortgages, and we like that. All right, so let's take a look at what's in the news. I always like to see what's going on and in the economy, and it's always fun to see that. So let's take a look for a minute at what's going on in the news. I kind of prepared some of the articles that I've been reading lately, and I got to tell you, a lot of people in the office have put some of these things on my desk because they know I like to do this. Here's one that came out a little while ago, and this is a big article in the paper. Many of you saw it. It says that most young Americans are not putting away enough for college, right? They aren't able to put away enough money for college or to be able to buy a house. Anybody relate to that? Here in the Bay Area especially, it's so expensive to live. One of the problems in buying a property is saving up the down payment. Would you agree? Right? You buy a $500,000 house, which here where you guys live is 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 1,400 square feet, run down, 35 years old on 5,500 square feet. That's $500,000. Do you realize how crazy that is? Right? We go to other places in the country, and they just can't believe the prices that people pay here. But those are the kind of properties. So it's hard to save. If you have to save 10% down, $50,000 is tough to come up with. Well, you know what we found in going to other areas? Let's say you go to an area where the average purchase price is $200,000. It is just as hard for those people to save $20,000 as it is for you to save $50,000. It really is. People tend to think that in their area everything's different, but it's not true. It's just all relative. So there's this interesting article. Here's one that came out, and this is, let's see, when is this? This is, today's paper. Couldn't find anything more current, sorry. Jobs report, Intel forecast sends stocks lower. Stocks are down again. The stock market is very interesting. We like to beat up the stock market because it's so easy. I'm fortunate, personally, I do have a small fortune in the stock market because I used to have a big fortune in the stock market. But we're in the walking wounded here in Silicon Valley, right? But interesting, this is an article that came out about a month and a half ago. Check this out. Insider selling of stocks rings warning bells. By one measure, Silicon Valley insiders, those are the executives and directors who run local companies, sold $170 worth of their company's stock for every dollar that they bought between June 1st and September 30th this year. So between June 1st and September 30th, the people that run the Bay Area companies, and should they have a little idea and insight into where it's headed? They sold $170 of their stock for every dollar they bought. Does that scare anybody? It's like, come on, you guys, the market's going up. Yeah, it's going up. Yeah, it's going up. Quick, sell, 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 right? And who gets stuck? We all get stuck. And here's the scary part. It's happened over and over and over again. And we still, like little sheep, to be slaughtered, walk up and invest, right? I mean, I bought Cisco when it was 65, and it'll come back in 300 years, right? So people that, I love this one. I'm waiting for my stock to come back up. That's a good one, right? I mean, maybe some stocks are coming back up, but there's a lot in the news about that. I mean, this is another one. This was in the paper last week, and it said that the 2 top executives at a company, one of them sold stock worth $2.57 million, and another one sold stock worth $1 million. This guy took stock options, bought almost 200,000 shares of his company's stock and sold it instantly. Guess how much he still owns of his own company stock? 1,000 shares. He kept 1,000 shares. He just sold 200,000. What does that tell you about what these people think? Here's a great one, Smart Money Magazine, if you saw this article. There's Warren Buffett. What's Warren Buffett doing? Nothing. Putting his money in cash. Right? Warren Buffett, best investor there's ever been, right? Well, the article in here talks about home prices. What's next for home prices? The dreading housing bubble hasn't burst. Not yet, anyway. The housing bubble's on the way, isn't it? Who's scared of the bubble? I got a clue for you. There is no bubble. There is no bubble. I'm going to prove that in just a minute. Anyway, what this finally says in this article is, relax, though, because all of the indicators, you can exhale, I can't, but it says you can exhale now. While home prices are no longer headed towards the stratosphere, they're not likely to come crashing down anytime soon. Interest rates are still low, economy is still showing signs of life, and tight housing inventories are still the rule in most marketplaces. Right here in your marketplace, what's housing like? What's the housing market like right now? It's going up, right? It's going up. Houses are selling. We've seen multiple offers again. Multiple offers on property, yeah, absolutely. So it's pretty good. We've got, stuff that's going on. It's not a crazy, crazy seller's market where you can put your house in the market and sell in 10 minutes, which, by the way, is never a good market, even when you're a seller. You think it is, right? Anybody sold a house in one of those markets? Remember those? You put, they're putting the sign out, and then they have to go back to the truck and put the sold sign on, right? Because that's how fast, multiple offers and all that. The problem with that is even though you might get a higher price for your house, in about a year or 2 years, you'll have a new title, and it will be defendant. Because you sold a house and they waived their inspection contingencies and they waived their appraisal, all the stuff they do in a hot market, and that comes back to haunt a lot of people, so be careful about that. Well, here's another topic in the news. A lot of little stealing. We've heard about the mutual fund scandal, right? SEC says mutual fund scandal is growing. We've got mutual fund firms have reason to fear injection. It's okay. You don't need to see all these. There's just dozens of them. Mutual fund mess casts cloud over investors. Here's one. Morgan to pay $50 million in their fund scandal. And prior to the mutual fund scandal, what was the scandal that we had? Remember the accounting scandal? Remember that one? Right? People were worried about irregularities in accounting. Do Americans have the confidence in companies they once did? No, they don't. And nobody cares more about your future than who? Than you. And so what in the past we've been able to do is just hand over our retirement accounts and our investment portfolios to somebody. We can't do that anymore. We need to be in charge. What else is going on? Well, let's talk about real estate. I always like to talk about that. The Bay Area office market is suffering. It's Santa Clara County, likely the worst in the nation. Here's that's office space, right? You know, you see a lot of these see-through buildings and stuff, right? You're driving down 101 and there's that Excited Home building. What a great building that is, right? It just happens to be empty. I'm thinking, that could be a really nice building. It's beautiful. There's lots of square footage in it, right? I'd like to buy that building as long as I had a tenant for it. Bay Area apartment rents flat in third quarter. How many of you own rental property right here in the Bay Area? How are your rents? Sorry to bring it up. We've had to lower our rents a little bit. We've had to make some rent concessions a little bit. We have a little more vacancy than we used to. But guess what? Time heals all wounds. Is it always going to be like that? No. It's going to get better. You watch. I promise. But can you wait is the question. Here's another one about real estate. I love this one. Foreclosure activity rises in the valley. Foreclosure activity. This is so newspapery. Remember, there was an article here in the Bay Area about a year ago, and it said that foreclosures soar 121%. And people were like, wow, that must mean every single house is being foreclosed upon. Then you read down all the way through the article, and it said that from one quarter to the next, there were 8 more foreclosures in the whole county. So the media blows everything out of proportion. In fact, the media is always reporting the negative side. Most newspapers run 6 negative stories about real estate for every 1 positive story, even in great markets. But, you know, you have to be careful what's in the paper. This is an article I know is important because it came out 3 days ago, and everybody in my office put it on my desk. I got 3 copies of these. Santa Clara County poised for multi-housing family home boom. So there's the one positive, right? All these negative articles. Finally, one comes out that's positive, and it says, yes, we're going to have room for multifamily housing, which could be good, right, and maybe not. But generally what they're talking about there, when they talk about multifamily housing, are those big apartment complexes that you see going in. Can you and I own those big apartment complexes? Not really. I mean, I haven't checked your financial statement on the way in, but personally, I have a little trouble with 1,000 units at once, right? It's one of my goals. I want to have 1,000 units in my personal repertoire, but I'm a ways away. Got a lot of goals, got a lot of funny goals. Here's one of my goals. Ron and I have a goal to personally be in debt $100 million by the end of next year. Who thinks we're out of our mind? Well, you haven't learned enough yet if you think so, because debt is what controls real estate. The more real estate you control, when it goes up in value, the more money you make. And you're going to be convinced of that by the time we're done today. And then finally, I'll end with this one, just as a, an article for you landlords. $6 million awarded against a landlord because a 9-year-old boy was badly burned when he was trying to warm his hands over the stove because the heater didn't work. Should the landlord have some responsibility in that case? Yeah, probably so. Should the landlord have $6 million worth of responsibility in that case? I don't know, folks. It's tough to be a landlord. It is. It's hard today, and it's getting harder. I'm not trying to discourage you from it. In fact, quite the opposite. I just think that if you're going to be a landlord, what you want to be is an educated landlord, and you want to understand the game you're in and play by the rules. At Landlord Boot Camp, we teach people how to be ethical landlords, because you know what? It's easier. It's easier to do the right thing most of the time and to run property like it's supposed to. Much easier way to go. All right, so I like to see what's going on in the news. Now, especially like this one. Lots of stuff, right? We always want to be going and understanding what's in the news, but understand that newspapers have an agenda. When you see a headline that says, foreclosures up 121%, why did they put that headline in the newspaper? Because they want to sell newspapers. Do they care about how many houses are foreclosing on? They don't care. They want to sell you newspapers. When you're walking by and you see the stands, you go, oh, I want to buy that one. That's what their job is, and they do that through alarming you. You need to be careful about what you read. Now, you can believe everything you hear on the radio. That's all good. But you got to be careful about what you read. All right, so let's talk about real estate. How does it compare to other things? We've looked at all the other things that you could invest your money in, stocks and mutual funds and bonds, and we've kind of spent a little time on that. But you want to look at a couple of instances. Robert Kiyosaki in Rich Dad Poor Dad. Who's read Rich Dad Poor Dad? Great. Look at all the hands. I love that. It's like 80% of the people have read that book. Do you think 80% of people in America have read that book? Or do you think the kind of people who read that book and have their thinking changed come to seminars like this? Pretty cool. So in that book, he says that you should invest, maybe it's not in that book, but Robert Kiyosaki does say that you should invest in things that, number one, banks will give you the money to buy, and number two, you can get insurance on. If a bank will give you the majority of the money, 80% of the money, to buy the asset, and you can get insurance on it, then it makes good investment. So ask yourself, how many of these things will the bank give you money to invest, the lion's share of the money, in fact, and let you have insurance on, unless it's already insurance. So why is real estate best? Let's talk about the reasons I think real estate is best. There's a whole bunch of them. Today you'll learn about the 4 ways that we make money in residential income property. But the first one, and the big one, is appreciation. Here's what happens to real estate. Properties go up over time. They become more and more and more and more valuable. And we've seen this happen. Now, how much do you think, on average, in the United States, how much do properties increase in value every year? 6%? 5%? 5 here? For years, I've been saying, 5 or 6%. Well, that was good enough for me, but it wasn't good enough for Russell's spreadsheet Gray. So Russ went back and researched this and figured out that from 1968 to 2000, the average increase in value was 6.19%. So 6.19% is the average. Well, that seems about right. But wait a minute. What does the stock market increase on average? Don't count the last couple of years, but on average, what does it go up? 11 to 12 to 15%. It goes up more. Well, Dolph DeRoos in his book Real Estate Riches said you can't really compare, because when we're talking about the stock market's performance in the last 60 years or whatever, they talk about like the S&P 500, which are the top 500 stocks. If we gauged real estate by the top 500 properties, how's it going to do? Much better than the stock market, but we don't get to do that. We get to do it as a whole. And as a whole, real estate goes up 6%. So isn't stocks a better investment? Well, no, because we got a lot of cool stuff that goes on. In fact, one of the great things about appreciation is that as time goes on, you have more and more and more of the property that belongs to you. That's what we call equity. And the truth, and one of the great truths in America, one of the best things you're going to hear today is that equity happens. Equity happens. As time goes on, that is what happens. You get more and more equity in your property. The only question is, will it happen to you? If you don't have any property, it won't. What is equity? Equity is the difference between the market value of a property and the loans against it. So I bought the property for $250,000. I put down $50,000, and I get a loan for $200,000. If the property goes up to $300,000, I have another $50,000 in equity. If it goes up to $350,000, now I have $100,000 in equity. $100,000 in equity. Now, your initial equity deposit or down payment, that counts as equity too, but you've already put that money in. But that's what equity is, and so equity will continue to happen, and I think you'll be convinced of that after today. So appreciation is one of the great things about real estate. It goes up. Does all houses appreciate? No! I was driving through Topeka, Kansas one night, and there's a billboard on the side of the road that says, "Are you tired of looking at 3-bedroom homes in the 50s? I thought, yeah, exhausted of that. And they had as a new housing development, and they started at like $47,900 was their starting price. And I actually went to, not this development, but another development where the house is real nice in Topeka, and it was in the April, May kind of time frame. A little hot, but it was nice, Anyone from Topeka? I beat up Topeka a lot, only because it's fun too, and it's not the end of the world, but you can see it from there. And I go to this housing development. It's a nice house. It's like 2,500 square feet, and it's $117,000 or something. I mean, I'm just going, wow, it's a beautiful, full basement. And then the guy starts talking about how the homeowners association's dues include snow removal. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, like snow removal. One other time I was back there in the Midwest, I had pulled over to the side of the side of the road and got a soda with ice in it, left it in my car overnight, came back, and there was still ice in the soda. It never got above freezing. This is why I don't live there. Problem with owning a house in Topeka is you have to go there, and who wants to? But in Topeka, if I would have bought that house for $47,900, today it's probably worth $51,200. 10 years later. So it doesn't go up in value. See, remember we talked about average? The average is 6%. About 2 years ago, we started investing in a marketplace here in California called Sacramento. We put ourselves in first and a few key clients. Ron and I went in. Paul, who started today, our sound guy, and he bought some property there. How about a hand for the sound crew and the video crew today? All right, well, they're not that good, but they're talented. Anyway, Paul's done sound for our seminars for a couple of times. He did this seminar, and he came and said, well, what about me? Like, could I put some property in? So Paul, who you saw standing on stage in the warm-up this morning, how many of you would rent to Paul? Not too many hands. Sorry, Paul. The question is, how many of you would Paul rent to? See, Paul owns property. We talked about earlier, should you own an investment property or a house you live in? Paul is a renter here, and he owns property in Sacramento. that property's gone up in value quite a bit. If I have time today, I'll tell you that story because it's a fun story. But property goes up in value, and Sacramento went up really well. We put clients in, many of the people in the room actually are either from Sacramento or bought property there, and those are the ones that you can tell are smiling, because last year, Sacramento was the number 1 appreciating marketplace in America. Is it good to invest in the number 1 appreciating marketplace in America? Yeah, are you always going to be able to do that? Now, here's a question for you. Do you think that we went up and put a bunch of people into Sacramento property and then by some coincidence it went up in value? Or do you think that my company spends its time researching areas that are going to go up way above average? I don't know. You decide. See, here's the thing about average. Average means half the markets are better and half the markets are below. Do you know that more than half, let's do this. Here's averages for you. Right now, half the people in this room are below average intelligence. For this room, right, half of you are below average intelligence for the room. Is that true? That's a statistic for you. Look at averages, and they're only averages. Appreciation, though, the way that we do better than the 6% is we do a little research and a little study and a little due diligence, and we find markets that we expect will have better appreciation. Not necessarily the best in the nation, but pretty well. All right, what else? Leverage. This is a great positive benefit about real estate. In real estate, you don't have to have 100% of the money to get the asset. You control the asset for a portion of the value. So rather than have to have all of the money to buy a property, I can have just a part, a down payment, say 20%. What if I put 20% down on a $250,000 property? $50,000 controls the asset. Now, if the $250,000 property goes up to $300,000, how much of the $50,000 in gain does the bank get? None. But they gave you 80% of the money to buy the property. Who gets all of the gain? You do. Is that a cool deal? Now, we have bankers in the room, so we're not going to hit too much on this today. So here's what leverage is: the use of credit or borrowed funds to improve one rate of return. So leverage is something that will help you increase your rate of return. See, if I kept, the example I just gave you was 5-to-1 leverage, right? I'm controlling 5 parts of real estate for 1 part of cash. $50,000 is controlling $250,000 worth of real estate. If that real estate goes up 5%, what's my return? 25%. Right? Because it's magnified by the leverage. That is why, one of the reasons why real estate beats the stock market, because there's not leverage in the stock market. All right, another reason, cash flow. Cash flow is a good thing, right? We like cash flow. In fact, we like cash flow to be positive. And here's what happens. When rental income exceeds expenses and debt service, so you take more money in than goes out, you have what we call positive cash flow. Who likes positive cash flow? Yay! All right. Now, positive cash flow isn't all it's cracked up to be. I'll talk about that this afternoon because there's some great strategies that involve break-even or negative cash flow. But positive cash flow is eventually what you want to get to, right? More money at the end of the month, not more month at the end of the money, right? People come into our consultation. Here's one of the things people like to say. Well, I'd like to get to a point where my passive income from real estate meets or exceeds my income from my job. Anybody relate to that? Wouldn't that be good? That'd be good, right? Yeah, you can applaud for that. Do you know when I like to wake up in the morning? When I'm finished sleeping. Not when my alarm clock says I have to get up and go to work and go to a meeting, right? In fact, I like to order my dinner without having to look at the right side of the menu to see how hungry I am. Follow me in that? How many of you like food with your meals? Yeah. So cash flow eventually is a good thing. We want to have property that provides cash flow. Bob's $4,000 a month, $4,000 a month, $4,000 a month. What's going to happen to that $4,000 a month? $4,200, $4,200, $4,200, $4,400, $4,500. It's going to continue to go up. Now, guess what? It used to be more. It's come down a little bit because that property's here in the Bay Area, but it's still $4,000 a month. So cash flow is pretty good. What else? What about tax benefits? We talked about that before, but your government is going to give you incentive to invest in real estate, and they do that through a host of means. All right, so last benefit we'll talk about is that real estate has a simple financial model. I told you earlier I invested in Cisco. I'm not really sure what they make. And I sure don't understand their business model fully when it comes to where the dollar's going, all that kind of stuff. But here's what I know about real estate. It's got a simple model. Rental property is easy for everyone to understand. Here's how it works. People live in or work in your building and pay your rent. Do I need to cover that again? That's the financial model. People live there and they pay you rent. And everybody understands that. It's not difficult to understand the financial model. Some investments are so convoluted and difficult, it's hard to figure it out. All right, now let's talk. We talked about the past a little bit, right? In the last 60 years, there's not been a single 10-year period that if you had bought at 1 year and sold 10 years later that you wouldn't have made money. In fact, here in the Bay Area, how much does property go up in 10 years? It about doubles in value, In the last 20 years, it's gone up 10 times in value in the Bay Area. Ooh, but that's long term. If you bought here in 1989 and sold in 1994, how'd you do? Ow. Sorry to put salt in the wound, right? Not very good. You could have lost money in real estate. But if I bought at the very peak of the market in 89 and sold in 99, how'd I do? Really good. My property went up how much? It about doubled. But what about the future? Is the past an indication of the future? It's an indication, but it's not the only indication. Can it continue to go up? There are people right now who live in the room, who live in a $500,000 house, who can't even imagine someone paying $1 million for that house, right? The people that bought that house when it was worth $40,000 couldn't imagine it being worth $100,000. In the Bay Area, you have an advantage because you see how expensive real estate can get. You can go buy a brand new house in some areas, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, third of an acre property for $180,000. Tile roofs, air conditioning. I'll show you some of those in our case studies later today. And you go, wow, that's cheap. And it is compared to what, right? It'd be a long commute. How many of you know people that commute over 2 hours because of their job here in the Bay Area, right? They commute over 2 hours. I'm sorry, my time is more valuable than that. Than sitting in the car? Ugh. But long-term will property go up? It will go up, and here's why. Real estate will continue to be a good investment, I think, for a lot of reasons. First of all, rents will continue to increase. We know rents will continue to increase because the population grows. Do you know in the next 20 years we expect there to be 50 million more people in America? Those people will have to live somewhere. Do you think here in Silicon Valley, capital, information capital of the world, will they be able to create a technology that eliminates the need for people to live under shelter? I don't think so. I think we're always going to need a place to live. And what about household growth? The number of households is going up, and the size of households is going down, right? There are less people in households. We have 2.3 is the average now. That's headed down more 0.2 because we're going to have more single-family, more single households, more one-parent households, those kind of things. And then income trends. Overall, as Americans get more educated and productivity increases, there is more income in the economy. Also, I think rents will continue because second homes are becoming more and more popular, right? Timeshares to start with. Now, a timeshare is not an investment in real estate. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. And in fact, I'll sell you one later on. No. If you ever want like a crash course in sales techniques, go to one of these free timeshare seminars. It's absolutely amazing. But a timeshare is a prepaid vacation. So it's not an investment in real estate. It's a prepaid vacation. But second homes are expected to triple in the next 20 years. People want to have multiple homes. Now, of course, Ron's going, yeah, I'd like to have 3 times as many homes as I have. But because you like to go places. So we don't like to rent anything. We really don't. We have a car that we keep in another city because we like to be able to fly in there and go to the long-term parking and get the car and not have to like rent a car and stuff. Because we just have this aversion to paying rent, and so we have a house in that city and those kind of things. And people will continue to do that. Also, what about the echo boomers, right? Baby boomers, a lot of you are baby boomers. The next generation is coming up, and guess what? A lot of renters are on the way. A lot of first-time buyers are on the way. First-time buyers drive up the prices, and we know that Americans don't have a lot of confidence in the stock market. Can the stock market possibly provide the income for people's retirement that we all need? It can't. Do the numbers. So more and more investors will be turned into real estate, which is good for you now and means in the future might not be as good because there'll be more competition for properties. But I've talked a lot about real estate. I've said a lot of good things about real estate. I'm very positive real estate. Can you tell? Now, full disclosure, I have to tell you, not everyone thinks real estate's a good investment. In fact, let's look at what some of the experts have said. Like experts like people from the media, or like people who are forecasting what's happening. Here's what some of the experts say. The prices of houses seem to have reached a plateau, and there is reasonable expectancy that prices will decline. That's what Time magazine said. Houses cost too much for the mass market. Today's average price is out of reach for 2/3 of all buyers, according to Science Digest. The goal of owning a home seems to be getting beyond the reach of more and more Americans. Business Week. The era of easy profits in real estate may be drawing to a close, Money Magazine. And if you're looking to buy, be careful. Rising home values are not a sure thing anymore, the Miami Herald. So the media isn't sure real estate's a good investment. But look at when these statements were made. I am really glad I didn't rush out in 1991 to buy a bunch of houses. That would have been done. In 1947, houses cost too much. When they said that, the average house price was $8,000. $8,000. Not 80, not even 800, right? $8,000. The experts agree that, so here's what you have to be careful. Who are you listening to? Are you listening to people that are making their income and providing wealth for their families by investing? Or are you listening to people who make their money selling magazines or selling books and tapes? I think you should get your real estate investment advice from someone who invests in real estate, not from somebody who sells you the information so you can maybe go invest in real estate. Follow me on that? Mark Twain said it best. He said, don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait. I'll see you guys later. Thank you very much.
Russell Gray is a real estate investor and expert in real estate finance and investment strategy. An advisor to Robert Helms, Russ is a faculty member for the California Association of Realtors, teaching finance to real estate agents pursuing the prestigious GRI designation. He's the co-founder and regional vice president of a successful mortgage company and the co-founder of the Advisor Financial Alliance. Here's Russ to share with you equity-building financing strategies, including the amazing free duplex story.
Hey, all right. We having a good time? It's my job to make spreadsheets fun. How many of you liked math when you were in school? Right? Okay, that's good. That's good. I was arithmophobic, so I have arithmophobia. I couldn't stand math when I was in school. In fact, I had a tough time. I flunked Algebra 2 twice. But when I became an adult and I started putting dollar signs in front of the numbers, they got very interesting to me. And so it's my job to share with you some financing concepts. You know, a lot of people will come in and they will want to talk to you about mortgages and lender ratio, debt-to-income ratios, and want to talk to you about all kinds of lender criteria. And there's lots of technical things about the mortgage business that's nice to know. But the thing about technical information is available from all the technical people that are around you. Where people really tend to get lost is they don't get the concept, they don't get the strategy, and they don't know how to apply the technical information. Does that make sense? So what I want to do is I want to talk to you about financing concepts, and we want to talk to you about using financing debt as a tool to build equity. You hear Robert say earlier that he wants to be $100 million in debt by the end of next year? Do you hear that? $100 million. And yet we know that that $100 million will allow him to control what? More than $100 million worth of real estate, right? And so that's the purpose. So let's get into this real quick. First of all, let's get into some motivation. Let's talk a little bit about why do you want to pay attention to all these spreadsheets? Why are you interested in numbers? Why are you interested in financing? Here's the sad facts. Most people finish life broke. In fact, 66.5% of Americans over 65 years old live below the poverty level. How many of you knew that? Right? I mean, maybe some of you have family members going through some of that. These are statistics we pulled up on the government websites. Median annual income for persons over 65, less than $14,000 a year. Can you imagine working your entire life and ending up with $14,000 a year of income to try to live on? So it's a sad fact, but that's what's going on out there. In 1993, the median income of net worth of households over age 65 was $86,000. So net worth is what you have left after you take everything you own and subtract everything you owe. What's left is your net worth. So you work your whole lifetime, and that's all you have to show for it. So most people finish life broke, but you don't have to. And so in order to change your future, you've got to do some things. Number one, you've got to change your focus. It's, I think Robert said earlier, the same level of thinking that created the problem is not going to solve the problem. As Einstein said, he was a pretty smart guy, right? Einstein? Yeah? Change your focus. Increase your knowledge. Many of you came here today to increase your knowledge. That's what this is all about. It's, I hope, not the end of your real estate education, but really the beginning for some of you. For many of you who are back with us again, it's a continuation of your quest for knowledge. Find people and resources to help you. That's huge. Do you think it's important to have people who know more than you around you? How many of you think that's a good thing to have? Absolutely. See, there's this thing, you know, we grow up watching these cowboy movies and we see these independent mavericks, these guys that don't need anybody, they do everything themselves, they don't have to listen to anybody. See, but the reality is success is really a team sport. And real estate is certainly a team sport. There are so many people that are going to play a critical role in helping you be successful in real estate. So get very comfortable with building relationships, making connections with people who can help you. I can't even begin to tell you how important that is. And at the end of the day, all the knowledge in the world and all the relationships in the world won't help you if you don't do what? You got to do it, right? Because no one's going to do it for you. How many of you are waiting for someone to strike an oil well in your backyard? See, that's not going to happen. See, nobody's going to come over and put in your Christmas stocking a winning lottery ticket. You understand? See, there's a little saying that says, if it's to be, it's up to who? Me. It's up to me. You have to go make your life happen. So, first of all, we want to cover some basic financing fundamentals. You need to understand the power of compounding interest. This is one of the 7 wonders or 8th wonders of the world. The power of compounding interest is phenomenal. Do you think that banks understand compounding interest? Oh yeah, they do. And which end of it do they like to be on? They like to be on the receiving end. Which end do they like you on? The paying end. In managing your mortgage for maximum net worth, we talk about how you can turn the tables on the banks and actually use their money to make money. Because you can borrow from them at one rate and invest at another rate, and you can end up making money with their money. But you need to understand the power of compounding interest, and we'll cover that in a little bit. Power of leverage. Robert talked earlier about leverage. Leverage is one of the most powerful financial concepts you can get. Now, one of the things you have to get used to with leverage is a thing called debt. Now, how many of you think debt's a bad thing? Go ahead, be honest. How many of you watch Suze Orman, right? With her pearly whites telling you all about how you got to invest in your debt, get out of debt? And then Robert's up here saying, I want to be $100 million in debt. I don't know how much she's worth, but I can tell you, being in debt has made Robert a lot of money. Okay, the power of cash flow. This is one of my favorites. Being in the mortgage business, I understand how powerful cash flow is. When you make a promise to pay that little $1,800 a month every month to your mortgage company at 6% interest, do you know what they give you? $300,000 in cash. That's what $1,800 a month is worth. See, so you need to understand the power of cash flow. We're going to cover that. Power of compounding leverage. What if you could borrow money and then get leverage on that and then get leverage on the borrowed money? Leverage on leverage. We'll show you how to do that. All right, and then avoiding the most common mistakes. And we're going to cover a list of, I think, about top 10 or so of mistakes that people tend to make when they're picking out the real estate financing. Okay, first of all, let's cover the power of compounding interest and the time value of money. If you had a $1,000 lump sum, spreadsheet number one for the day. Here you go. All right. Just take a look at the 10% column. If you got 10% return on that $1,000 and you just let it sit from age 20 to age 60 for 40 years, that $1,000 would be worth $45,000 at age 60. If you could just get 2 percentage points more, you'd think, oh, that's about 20% more than 10, right? So I should probably get about 20% more. But do you get 20% more? No, you get more than double. So do you think that getting an extra 2 or 3 or 4 points of return on your investments is important? It's huge. It's everything. Very, very important. Look at the 18% column after 40 years. Let's say you had a $1,000 lump sum sitting on that credit card. Now, I know none of you have that issue, right? Right, but you get out there, you're 20 years old, you get your first credit card, you charge up $1,000. It's convenient to make that little minimum payment every month, and you just kind of never get around to paying it off for your entire life. And there you are at age 60 with that $1,000 debt and 18% interest. Look what you paid. Wow. You think the banks know that? But you could take that $1,000 and invest in the bank at 7%. See, they pay you the $5,000, and they make the $750. That's why the banks have bigger buildings than you do. Okay, $100 cash flow. Let's talk about cash flow. Here's another spreadsheet for you. If you check out cash flow, that $100 a month. See, most of you, maybe even for some of you, $1,000 is, whoa, $1,000, that's a lot of money. Maybe some of you young people are thinking, man, $1,000, where could I get $1,000? But $100 a month. If you get the discipline of every month just putting up $100 for yourself, and you get 10% from age 20 to age 60, 40 years, $632,000. But if you could get 12%, look at the difference. $1.1 million. So ROI, return on investment, or in real estate we call return on equity, getting that extra 2, 3, 4, 5% is huge in what it does for your life. But that's the power of cash flow. All right, now let's take a look at leverage. Now you need to understand the concept of leverage, and it works like this. What most of us call in consumer land a down payment, in real estate investing is like an equity deposit. So you've got this little piggy bank called this piece of property. What you do is you take a lump sum of money and you deposit that money into the piggy bank. Okay, we're going to call that an equity deposit. And you put that money in there, and then you get the balance of the purchase money from the lender, like Robert showed earlier. You got the big house, but you only had to put up a portion of the money. That's leverage. All right, so if you could put in half the money of your own money and get the other half from the bank, then your leverage is 2 to 1, because you're controlling 2 parts of real estate to 1 part of cash, of equity, right? So your ratio is 2 to 1. So if that property moves up, the appreciation is magnified by your leverage because you get both sides. You get the bank side plus your side of the appreciation. Does that make sense? Okay, we'll cover it again in just a second. But if you only put 20% down, now you're in it 5 to 1 because you're controlling 1/5. You're controlling 5/5 of the property with 1/5 of the money. Make sense? 5 to 1. That property moves 5%. 5% times 5 to 1 leverage is what return? Come on, you guys. 25%, absolutely. If you can get in at no money down and it appreciates, what's your return? It's infinite. Okay, now we just found out how important it is to get that extra 3, 4, 5, 6%. What if you could get yourself up to triple-digit returns? What if you could buy a property for 5% down or 10% down and that property moved 10%? At 10% down, a property that moves 10% is 100% return on your equity. 100%. Let's take a look in real life, right? Because you can only take so many spreadsheets, I understand. You have a $250,000 property and you put $50,000 down, that's 20%. So you're in at what? 5 to 1. Okay, you get 5% appreciation on that $250,000. I know it's early. 5% of $250,000 is $12,500. So if you get $12,500 of gain on a $50,000 investment, then what's your return? 25%. See? So the math checks out. Remember when you were a kid, you'd do the math and then you had to go back and check your work and you'd back into the math and see if the answer is balanced? Same idea here. Real estate ownership pays. Here's another concept in leverage, very important. You can control a $250,000 property with $50,000. How many of you came here today with $50,000 in your back pocket? Right? Oh, great. Okay, come see me afterwards. But if you don't have it, then what does it take to control $50,000? Remember I talked to you about the power of cash flow? Mortgage companies like to convert their lump sums of cash into streams of income. So they'll give you a lump sum of money if you'll promise to pay them a monthly payment. And so cash flow and equity is what you need. So if you've got cash flow and you've got equity, then you can go get $50,000 of that equity and access it with cash flow. And here's what that looks like. $50,000 cash out mortgage on property A. How many property owners do we have in the room? Okay, a whole bunch. Anybody here own property more than, say, 5, 7 years? Okay, you probably have a little bit of equity in that property then, yeah? Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. You own a property, you've got some equity in it now. What you're going to do is go in and you're going to get $50,000 of that equity out. You still get to live in the house. It's still going to go up in value. You still get tax breaks. In fact, you get a bigger tax break now, right? Because you get a little bit bigger loan. So nothing changes except that you have a little bit more leverage on the piece of property you're in, and now you have cash to go do something else. What else might you do? Well, first of all, let's figure out how much it's going to cost you. Your payment at 6% interest on a 30-year loan on that $50,000 is $300 a month. Now, doesn't $300 a month sound a little bit more achievable than $50,000? Anybody here ever bought a new car? Okay, you know how it is when you walk in to get the new car and you're looking at the stickers and you walk in and the person says, can I help you? And you say, no, I'm just looking. But really you want to buy the car, but you just don't want them to take your money. And so they ask you, well, what kind of a payment did you have in mind? Isn't that what they always lead with? What kind of a payment did you have in mind? Because they know you don't buy price, you buy what? Payment. You don't buy price, you buy payment. And so they say, well, what payment would you feel comfortable with? And you say, oh, I feel comfortable with about $300. And they say, well, let me go talk to my finance managers. And they come back with what? $375. They always stretch you a little bit, right? Okay, but they know that you're going to buy the payment because for you to pay $50,000 for a car, or 60 or whatever the number is, of course, a $60,000 car probably costs you about $1,500 a month, right? If you don't put any money down. But in real estate, because it's 30 years and the interest rates are very low, the payments for how much cash you control are very low. You with me? So it doesn't take a lot to control the property or control the $50,000. So you get your payment to 6%, it's $300 per month. $50 of that is principal. Now, or amortization. Like, you know, amortization, mortuary to kill the loan balance. And so every month you put in $300, but $50,000 comes off your loan balance. Okay? So every month your balance sheet's getting a little stronger as that loan gets paid off. Meanwhile, you get to do what with the other $250? It's interest. You get to do what? You get to deduct it, right? We're going to cover that again in just a second. $50,000 to invest at 20% down gets you that $250,000 property. So now you've got two properties. You've got property A, the one you started with, and now you've got property B. And presumably you're controlling property B and the mortgage on property B with what? When you buy income property, you buy and pay for two things: income and property. And so when you get the rental income, you use that to control the mortgage, and then you use the tax deductions to control the down payment. So effectively, you're no money down into the second property. You with me? Okay, if it doesn't make sense, I'm going to cover it again in a second because I am going to get to draw on this fancy projector we've got. At 5% appreciation, that second property grows $12,500 a year. Now, how much of your money is in this deal at the end of a year? What do you think? Well, you got $300 a month in the deal, right? You don't have $50,000. That's the bank's money. All you've got is $300 a month times 12, so let's see what that looks like. You get $250 a month of interest because the $50 was paying off your debt, right? So you took it out of your checkbook and you put it into your equity account. You with me? Okay? So really your cost is only $3,000 of interest. Now, forgetting the tax deduction and just saying at 5% appreciation that property B goes at $12,500, your returns look like this. You got a $12,500 capital gain unrealized because you haven't sold the property, less $3,000 of your cost to access the $50,000. So at the end of the year, you've got a $9,500 pre-tax unrealized gain. Make sense? What's that as far as a return on investment? 316%. 316%. Is that better than 12? See, so you notice all the little dollar signs on there? See, that's when math got interesting to me. All right, so where do you find the $300 a month? Well, first of all, how many of you pay taxes? How many of you love paying those taxes, right? Yeah, most of us would probably like to try to find a way to get out of paying tax. Now, we're not talking about not paying tax that you owe. What we're doing is we're talking about trying to find ways to reduce the amount of tax that you owe. So it's better to work with the law than against it. Does that make sense? Okay? And so we're going to have a CPA come and tell you some things that you can do to help make the tax code work for you. Do you think it's important to stay up to date on what's going on with tax law? Absolutely. You cannot afford to be ignorant. When I got to the point in my life where I was paying $50,000, $60,000 a year in taxes, I decided that it was probably worth my time to become educated. And so if you're serious about going out and improving your financial position, then you are going to have to deal with taxes. You might say, well, you know what? I don't like taxes very much. Oh, well, you know, I don't like math very much. Sorry. You know, I mean, there's a price you pay, right? I mean, no, like I said, I didn't see any hands go up. Any oil wells being struck in anybody's backyard? See, it's not going to happen. You've got to go out and do it, but this is what you have to do. So get familiar with two schedules, Schedule C and Schedule E. Schedule C is the losses or profit on a sole proprietor, self-employed person. So you can start up a little side business, and I'm not here to give you tax advice, but the point is if you go to the IRS website and download that schedule, you will find things on there that you can use to create deductions. And get very familiar with a term called depreciation. Schedule E is the schedule you get to fill out when you own income property. And so those are two schedules you want to be familiar with because you can find free money by getting tax credits against taxes you're already paying. That's found money. Okay, reduce or eliminate amortization. I'm a big fan of interest-only loans. You know, if I'm going to go in and refinance a property and pull equity out so I can go buy another property, why would I want to put equity in to start with? My goal is to put as little into the property as possible to control as much top-line real estate as I can. See, because here's the way it works. Cash flow controls mortgages. Mortgages control real estate. Real estate appreciates, and equity makes you wealthy. Does that make sense? So cash flow controls mortgages. Mortgages control real estate appreciates, and equity makes you wealthy. And so interest-only loans are a great tool when you can get them. The other thing that's great is go with a longer term. A lot of people say, I want that 15-year loan, I want to pay it off fast. Wrong answer. What you do is you end up creating all this huge amount of cash flow problem for yourself, and all you're doing is paying down the loan with after-tax dollars because the pay down, the amortization is not deductible. And so you go work and you make, you know, $100 at your job, and then they take 40% of it, and you take the 60 that's left, and then you go pay off a note to save yourself 6% interest, which is deductible, which is maybe a net of 3.5 or 4. How many of you would invest money at 4%? When you prepay your mortgage, that's what you're doing. Why would you do that? Because you didn't know, but now you know. All right, reduce interest. Okay, if you pick the right program and the right lending terms, then you can often get a lower rate than what is the typical mortgage out there. And I don't have time to go into a lot of that detail today, but it's well worth getting educated. You know, a lot of people think the house or the piece of property is the biggest expense. It's not. The biggest expense is the financing and the interest attached to the financing. You need to learn how to work those things in your favor, not the bank's. Here's the most common mistakes that people make when they're doing financing. Okay, the first thing is they build up too much equity in a single property. A lot of people start out with the goal, I want to get the house paid for. Then I want to own a second house and get it paid for. And then I want to get everything paid for. And then I'm going to get all this cash flow, which of course is taxable. Okay, the other thing is they want to consume the taxable positive cash flow. So the property starts spitting off all this cash flow. You're like, woohoo, I got money. And you take it, you start to spend it. At the end of the year, you send in your tax return, and the tax man says, well, wait a minute. I want a piece of that action. And so maybe that's not the best way to pull money out of your property. If it's the only way, then you got to do it, right? But is it the only way? No, it's not the only way. There are other ways to do it. Okay, making extra principal payments. We just got done talking about that. If you're going to pull the money out again, why put it in the first place? It makes no sense. Okay, using a 15-year mortgage. Talked about that. The difference between a 30-year and a 15-year mortgage is a little tiny break in interest because the bank is getting their working capital back sooner. So they give you a discount for that. But in exchange for that, what you're doing is taking a payment that would be like this and making it like this. And like I said, the difference there is after-tax pay down of the loan. So basically you're investing in your own debt. And that would be fine if there were no other investments available. Remember when Robert said, you know, is it a good deal? I think he was talking about that's expensive. But the answer is 3 words, right? Compared to what? See, when you're going to make an investment, you have to ask yourself, is that a good investment? Well, compared to what? Compared to what? If you know that you can go into real estate, make 20, 25, 30, 40, 50, 300% return, why would you want to invest at 3.5%, 4, 5%? You wouldn't. Using a fully amortized mortgage, same thing. You're taking chunks of money, after-tax dollars, and you're pumping it into your loan. All right, using a 30-year fixed, no-points mortgage. This is my favorite, okay? What do you think the #1 loan sold in America today is? 30-year fixed, no points, no fee. Why? Because Grandpa did it, right? Because great-grandpa did it. Because back in their day, inflation wasn't what inflation is. All right, so they want a 30-year loan. See, those same people that said you go to work for a company and then you work there till they give you the gold watch 40 years later. Now, is that the way it works in our economy today? It doesn't work that way, right? So the industry knows that the average person sells or refinances their home every 4 to 7 years. At 4 to 7 years, do you care what the interest rate is on your loan 10 years from now? If you're going to get rid of it, what do you care? It could be 100. It doesn't matter because you're out of the loan. You may even be out of the property. And so if you can get a discount for using a shorter term loan, maybe that makes sense, right? And what about points? I don't have time to go into all the details on points, but if you think about it, points buy down the interest rate so you get a cheaper payment. If you're going to stay in a loan for 30 years, don't you want the lowest payment possible? If it only took you 2 years to recoup the points and then for the next 28 you save money, would that make sense? Most of the time it does. But that's the second question, because the first question is how long are you going to keep the loan? And so you have to begin with the end in mind. Investor versus consumer mentality. We talk about this all the time. This is huge. Remember the very first thing we talked about? If you want to change your future, you have to change your focus. Yeah, the same thinking that created the problem isn't going to solve it. Okay, here's the way consumers look at things when it comes to real estate. They focus on interest rate and debt. I want the cheapest interest rate and I want to be debt-free. Okay, that's the way consumers think. Here's what investors focus on: cash flow and net worth. If you're using leverage and you lose control of your cash flow, you lose control of the portfolio. And if your job is to go create wealth for yourself, that wealth is represented in a term called net worth. You take all of your assets and you subtract all of your liabilities, and at the end, you want a big number. Now, if I have to have $100 million in debt so I can control $200 million in assets, and I have $100 million net worth, isn't that better than having $1 million net worth with no debt? Because you can always peel it back in, right? Okay? So it's just a different mentality. Now, I hear the sound of breaking glass out there, some paradigms being broken. And that's what happens. People come to these seminars and they think, that they're going to get some secret formula. The secret formula is changing the way you think. Okay, there's 4 ways to make money with investment real estate. Okay, the first one's cash flow. That's when you have money coming in and money going out. And if at the end of that exchange you have more coming in than going out, you have made a profit, right? Basic. Amortization is the pay down of the mortgage. When you have a mortgage that the tenant is paying, effectively, because they pay you rent and you use their money to pay the mortgage, if part of that payment is going towards paying down the debt, that's profit to you. You can't say that about living in your own house, because if you do that in your own house, then who's paying it down? You are, with after-tax dollars. Okay, depreciation, this one's huge. These are tax credits you get for a non-cash expense. Do you hear what I said? Non-cash expense. That's an oxymoron, like reliable copier. Two words that don't belong together. Non-cash expense, right? And so what this is the government looks at the building and says, well, you know, this building is going to wear out over time, but the dirt it's built on will last forever. And so therefore, the value of the dirt cannot be written off as a loss, but the building can be. And so every year you get to take a loss on paper for which you put no money out, and that's called depreciation. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later at one of the following speakers. Appreciation, this is our favorite, okay? And that's where you just live in the property or you own the property and time just sends the price up. Equity happens. Now, those of you that own property for more than 5 or 10 years have experienced that, right? How hard did you have to work for that? Like Robert always talks about, my hard-earned equity, right? You just happen to own the property. Now, if it worked good one time, do you think it would work good twice? And if it worked well twice, do you think it would work well 4 times? And if it worked well 4 times, would it work well 8 times? Say, how much property do you want to own? All of it. Thank you. All right, here's the free duplex story. Okay, I'm going to tell you how it works, and then I'm going to draw it on this projector. What you do is you use a new mortgage to transfer idle equity into an income property. Use tax credits in the rental income to cover all the payments. So basically, you have the down payment for free. Allow passive equity and leverage to improve your net worth over time. Because remember, it's about net worth, right? So now you're controlling cash flow and net worth. Am I talking about interest rate here? Do I care? If I have an 8% interest, in fact, I'll tell you, my first rental property, my interest rate was 12.6%. And it was positive cash flow because the rent covered it. As long as the rent covered it, did I care? Now, do I like it better when it's lower? Sure. But am I not going to invest? How many of you drive back and forth to your job? And you do that because you love the scenery and all the people at the workplace, right? Oh, no. You do it for the paycheck. Okay, so you go to work for the paycheck. So you drive to work, you do your thing, you come back at the end of the week or the end of the month, whenever you get your paycheck. Now, you go to the gas station, you put gas in your car, and it's $1.50 a gallon. You go to work.